It's really hard to understate how big Anpanman is. That circular smiley face is one of the most recognizable symbols in Japan. Soreike Anpanman Minna de Hiking Game is his third video game outing. The previous two were mainly notable for being educational games that use the Soreike Kids tablet controller. This isn't an educational game, and you could play it with the controllers that are already attached to your Famicom, though you'll need an expansion controller if you want to play 3 players. Anpanman is a bread-headed superhero who fights against invading alien bacteria. He's a good-hearted, cheerful sort. Minna de Hiking Game is a board game, but it does have some marginal improvements over the ones we usually see on the Famicom. There are 8 different maps that you can play on, and up to 3 players can take part in every game. They can choose to play as Anpanman, Korepanman, or Shokpanman. There's also always a 4th player on the board, the villainous Baikinman, who's there to act as a spoiler. On every turn, you get a random number between 1 and 5, and then move that many spaces. You get points for every space that you move, and it increases the further you move on your turn. So if you move 4 spaces, then you get 10 plus 20 plus 30 plus 40 points. So you get a lot more points for rolling high than for rolling low. The game ends when anyone reaches the goal, and then there's a final point tally, and whoever has the most points wins. But that's only half the story here. You also get points for participating in mini-games, and that's where the bulk of your points will come from. There are 6 mini-games that you can encounter depending on what square you land on, and some of them are higher scoring than others. Also, failing a mini-game results in points going to Baikinman. In the maze game, your goal is to get to one of the pictures before time runs out. If you reach Batako, then you get 100 points. Reach Jam and you get to move some extra squares. Or if you go to Baikinman, then the alien bacteria gets points. The bingo game gives you 5 random faces, and getting 3 in a row will give you some points. The more times you get 3 in a row, the more points you get. Sometimes this game will automatically give you the middle square, too. On some maps there's an exclamation point that automatically stops you and begins this action mini-game. You have to dodge the viruses that Baikinman is tossing out of his ship. They circle and home in on you, which actually makes it trickier than it sounds. If you can dodge them long enough, you'll get a shortcut and some points. On this minigame, you just have to locate any squares where the picture is different. Usually there's only one difference, but you don't lose any points for guessing wrong. So what I was doing was spotting what I could, and then just taking a wild guess right before time ran out. The final 2 mini-games involve turning over some cards. Here you have to match 5 pictures, and you can get it wrong 4 times. Sometimes when this one starts up, it'll reveal what's behind each card very, very briefly. And in the other game, Baikinman rearranges the cards in the top row, and then you have to pick out what card he's standing in front of. Huh, what are the odds of that? Well, it definitely won't happen again. What? Anyways, the 2 card minigames and the bingo minigame can be played separately from the board game. On every map there's this smiley face, and if you have it at the end of the game, you collect an additional 1,000 points. Baikinman can pick it up first, but any player can steal it by rolling Dokin. She'll come down and play rock, paper, scissors with you, and if you win and don't have the smiley face, she gives it to you. If you do have the smiley face, then you get to move some additional squares, and if you lose, then you lose a turn. There's one more type of special square on the map, and that's these springs. When you land on one of those, it randomly picks out a player and sends whoever was on the spring to that player. So yes, that can include yourself. If Baikinman lands on you by any method, then he steals 100 of your points. And this actually results in a problem for the game. The more players there are in the game, the more opportunities Baikinman has to steal points. So if you're playing 3-player, it's very likely that the computer is going to win. Soreike Anpanman Minna de Hiking Game doesn't seem to have a huge following in Japan. If anyone talks about it at all, it seems to be because it's an Anpanman game. As for my own opinion, well, it's not as bad as a lot of the board games we've seen on the Famicom. And I can't bring myself to be that hard on a game whose target audience was 6-year-olds. There's just enough skill involved here that I think it prevents the game from devolving into complete randomness. And all of the 8 maps have some kind of gimmick to give the game a bit of variation. I could definitely see how a kid who got this in 1992 would be pretty excited by it. But I don't see many adults wanting to play it 30 years later.